When you have an undifferentiated critically ill patient, after initial stabilization, one of the most important pieces of information will be to determine their left ventricular ejection fraction. This helps guide their management in numerous ways, such as fluid administration, vasopressor choice, or initiation of mechanical circulatory support devices. Measuring the left ventricular ejection fraction will be of critical importance and is the topic of this lecture. When we discuss left ventricular ejection fraction, we often talk about qualitative or quantitative ways to measure it. When we talk about quantitative, the top three are the best for point-of-care ultrasound, including E-point septal separation, fractional shortening, or mitral annular plane systolic excursion, also known as MAPSI. There are additional ways that are more time-consuming, with the Simpson's biplane method being the gold standard recommended by the American Society of Echocardiography, but it's very time-consuming. On the other side, there's qualitative, also known as the visual estimate or eyeball method, which is actually quite accurate after you've looked at least 50 echoes. A quick note on Simpson's biplane method. This is a method where the ultrasound machine will divide the LV cavity into numerous discs of equal height, then calculate the volume of each disc, add up those volumes, and then it calculates a total LV cavity volume both in systole and diastole. So that means it requires tracing of the endocardial border in both systole and diastole in both apical 4-chamber and apical 2-chamber views, which, as you can see, is very time consuming. Here's one of the summary slides up front. Comparing 4 different groups of ejection fraction measurements, starting with the eyeball technique. It's always available. However, the accuracy is dependent on the observer skill. The reproducibility is low, but the speed is instant. E-point septal separation and fractional shortening, it's widely used. However, it is dependent on geometric assumptions. The reproducibility is a bit better at low to modest, but the speed is still pretty quick. For Simpson's biplane, it's generally used much more in the echo lab, but it minimizes the mathematic assumptions because of the measurements. The reproducibility is higher at modest, but the speed is very slow due to tracing. And then finally, AI. It's coming. There are some options out there. It's a black box, but the reproducibility is high since it's not dependent on any one person. However, the speed and the accuracy is dependent on the company that makes it. Measuring ejection fraction at the bedside is not an exact science, and when we start out, we're just trying to determine is the ejection fraction normal or abnormal. And as you get more proficient with the skill, you'll be able to bin it into one of 4 categories, including hyperdynamic, normal, mild to moderately reduced, or severely reduced. But before we can discuss any quantitative measure of ejection fraction, you have to understand Mmode. Mmode is an imaging modality on the ultrasound machine that takes one crystal and graphs it over time. It's also known as motion mode. So you'll notice that the x-axis is time here, and the y-axis is depth. And so this aortic valve would be graphed similar to this, with opening in systole and closure in diastole. Same with the mitral valve. It'll be open in diastole here and closed in systole. This has a very high frame rate, which is useful for fast-moving objects. We're going to discuss 3 different techniques to measure left ventricular ejection fraction, starting with EPSS. Why multiple techniques? Well, each one has limitations that we'll discuss. E-point septal separation, or EPSS for short, takes advantage of the mitral valve movement to measure the ejection fraction. You'll notice that we use the Mmode cursor here through the anterior leaflet of the mitral valve here at the tip. And if you look at it through the cardiac cycle, you'll notice in diastole there's 2 waves. First, there's an E wave here and an A wave. And you'll measure the distance here between the peak of the E wave and the septum, hence the name E-point septal separation. It's important to remember that you're measuring the first wave, which is the E wave, or the early wave, as opposed to the A wave, which is the atrial kick as seen here. So again, EPSS is E-point septal separation. Here's the tracing of E-point septal separation. You'll notice on the top of the screen there's the B mode image, and at the bottom of the screen is the M mode. And if you freeze it once they obtain the images here, you'll notice that there's an E wave here and an A wave, and then again you'll measure the distance between the top of the E wave and the septum right here. A normal E-point septal separation is less than 8 millimeters, and this 8 ball is a helpful mnemonic for me to remember this. Mild to moderately reduced would be an E-point septal separation between 8 and 18 millimeters, and severely reduced would be greater than 18 millimeters. Now think of this. Actually, a smaller EPSS means a larger ejection fraction. So they're inversely correlated. And you'll note that this is a diastolic measurement which predicts systolic function. Here's a real-world example of a severely reduced left ventricular ejection fraction. Look at the anterior leaflet of the mitral valve. You'll notice it gets nowhere near the septum during diastole. Again, this is severely reduced even without measuring it. Compare that last video to this one. Again, look at the anterior leaflet of the mitral valve. You'll notice it gets much closer to the septum, but still not within 8 millimeters if you measured it. This would be a mild to moderately reduced left ventricular ejection fraction. Now look at the anterior leaflet of the mitral valve. It's actually touching the septum during diastole. This is a normal or even hyperdynamic left ventricular ejection fraction. And here's how to actually measure the EPSS. When you freeze the Mmode, you'll put one caliper on the peak of the E wave and the other side on the septum. Here, it's only 3 millimeters difference, and here it's 15 millimeters difference. Although EPSS is excellent and probably the most used way to measure ejection fraction for point-of-care ultrasound, it does have limitations. First off, if your septal wall is hypertrophied for any reason, such as a sigmoid septum that usually comes with advanced age, also known as basal septal hypertrophy or septal knuckle, or LVH from longstanding high blood pressure, this will falsely lower the space between the E point and the septum and overestimate the ejection fraction. Wall motion abnormalities are a problem for every ejection fraction measurement, but in this instance, if you have a wall motion abnormality at the apex of the heart that does not affect the base of the heart, then you're going to still have the same EPSS, but your ejection fraction may be lower than what you measure. And this measurement also heavily relies on looking at the mitral valve. So if your mitral valve is not freely mobile and it's tethered down as in mitral valve stenosis, you're going to underestimate this ejection fraction. And finally, if you have moderate to severe aortic regurgitation, you're going to have a diastolic regurgitant jet coming from the aorta, and it's going to push down the anterior leaflet of the mitral valve, which is going to lower your ejection fraction. Here's an example of severe aortic stenosis, which is falsely lowering the EPSS when there's a normal ejection fraction. You'll notice the anterior leaflet of the mitral valve does not get anywhere near the septum, but it's not because of a poor ejection fraction. If you place color Doppler over the LVOT, you'll notice in diastole there is a bright blue regurgitant jet coming from the aortic valve that is pushing down the anterior leaflet of the mitral valve, and this is why this is a problem for EPSS. One thing to notice for aortic regurgitation is that the E wave will have a jagged line on the descent from the chaotic and turbulent blood flow of the aortic regurgitation, and this could give you a hint that AR is present. Moving on to the second way to measure ejection fraction, and that's going to be fractional shortening. The concept behind fractional shortening is measuring the change in size of the LV cavity from its biggest size in end diastole to its smallest size in end systole. And when you can compare these two differences by using this formula here, which I just remember as big minus small over big, you'll get the change in size of the LV cavity from diastole to systole. You'll notice that the measurement for fractional shortening is actually very similar to EPSS in that you place an Mmode spike through the LV cavity, but you don't place it actually on the mitral leaflets here. You place it just apically. Oftentimes you'll get chordae tendineae or sometimes papillary muscle in this measurement, but that's not important. And once you activate the Mmode, you'll notice that there's the actual LV cavity chamber size that changes over the cardiac cycle. And I have taken out the chordae tendineae since they're not important in this measurement. Here is a great illustration of an Mmode tracing of a normal ejection fraction measured by fractional shortening. You'll notice the interventricular septum up here, the LV posterior wall down here, and then the biggest distance is going to be your LV cavity at the end of diastole, and your smallest distance here is going to be the LV cavity at the end of systole. And again, you'll just measure the difference between these two sizes. Once you actually calculate the change in the LV cavity, you'll get the fractional shortening. And notice that this is not the same as ejection fraction, but there is a nice rule of thumb that 2 times the fractional shortening is about the ejection fraction. So if we say a normal fractional shortening is over 25%, that's equal to about an ejection fraction of 50%. And the same with severely reduced. Severely reduced of ejection fraction is about 30%, so that's about a 15% fractional shortening as seen here. Here's an example of a normal ejection fraction. Do not look at the EPSS, look at the fractional shortening in the yellow circle. You'll notice that the LV cavity changes at least 25% through the cardiac cycle, which indicates that this is a normal left ventricular ejection fraction. Compare the last example to this one. Again, don't look at the EPSS or the mitral valve, just look in the yellow circle. You'll notice that there's barely a change in the fractional shortening, and this is a severely reduced left ventricular ejection fraction. You can also use fractional shortening measurement in the peristernal short axis view with the same idea, measuring the chamber size at its greatest in end diastole and its smallest in end systole, and then again finding the difference between those two dimensions. Here are two examples of using fractional shortening in the peristernal short axis view. First, you'll notice that this ejection fraction is mild to moderately reduced, since I don't see at least a 25% change in the fractional shortening over here. And on this view, it's imperceptible how small the fractional shortening is, which corresponds to a severely reduced left ventricular ejection fraction. Of course, there are limitations to fractional shortening, and as I mentioned earlier, wall motion abnormalities will always be a limitation to your fractional shortening measurement or any ejection fraction measurement. But also, fractional shortening makes assumptions about LV size and shape, so if you don't have a normal LV size or shape, this could impact the accuracy of the fractional shortening estimating your ejection fraction. Our third and final measurement for ejection fraction is going to be MAPSI, which stands for mitral annular plane systolic excursion. This is similar to TAPSI, which stands for tricuspid annular plane systolic excursion, which is used to measure RV function. MAPSI is going to actually look at the mitral annulus to measure LV function. So the measurement for MAPSI is a little bit different. When we look at fractional shortening, we're measuring the change in the chamber size in these dimensions as seen in the white arrows. But for MAPSI, we're actually going to be looking at the rise of the base of the heart, or the annular excursion. The reason that MAPSI works to measure ejection fraction is that there's multiple orientation of the myocardial fibers in the heart, and MAPSI will work off of the longitudinal shortening as seen in A here to measure the ejection fraction. You'll notice in this apical four-chamber view of the heart, in systole, the base of the heart is actually rising up, and in diastole, the base of the heart descends. We're going to take advantage of this to measure the MAPSI. For this measurement, again, you'll use Mmode in the apical four-chamber view with the Mmode cursor through the annulus of the mitral valve. When you activate Mmode, you'll notice that the annulus actually moves up in systole and down in diastole, and you can measure this excursion with a caliper. So here's what it would look like. Here's the mitral annulus rising up in systole and descending in diastole and repeating. And if you can measure the distance between the peak and the trough, that's the MAPSI. Some people may argue about these numbers, but I find this the most accurate graph. If your MAPSI is 10 or more millimeters, that is normal. Mild to moderately reduced ejection fraction will be from 9 millimeters to 7 millimeters, and if you get to 6 or less millimeters, you have a severely reduced left ventricular ejection fraction. Here's an Mmode image through the mitral annulus measuring MAPSI. Notice they measure from the peak to the trough here, and it doesn't matter that they're actually moving on the x-axis. What is only important is the y-axis, since x-axis is time, y-axis is distance, and you'll notice that it's 1.48, or essentially 15 millimeters, which is a normal left ventricular ejection fraction. Here's another example of a MAPSI measurement. You'll notice an apical four-chamber view. The Mmode cursor is placed through the mitral annulus as seen here, and when it's measured from peak to trough, this is 13.6 millimeters, which is a normal MAPSI and normal ejection fraction. As you'd expect, MAPSI has limitations too. Again, wall motion abnormalities will cause problems with any ejection fraction measurement. And MAPSI is less accurate than a TAPSI is for the right ventricle because in the RV there's more linear contraction of the RV, whereas the LV has a more complex myocardial contraction, and that linear component is not as important as it is in the RV. The fourth and final way to measure left ventricular ejection fraction is not quantitative but qualitative. It's the eyeball technique or visual estimation. And what's happening here is that your brain is using what you know from fractional shortening, MAPSI, and EPSS and coming to an estimate of the ejection fraction. So here are two examples. Without making any Mmode measurements, which ejection fraction do you think is normal and which one is reduced? Well, the one on the left is seen here. You'll notice that it has a normal EPSS and normal fractional shortening, whereas the one on the right has a terrible fractional shortening and a terrible EPSS. And so your brain can notice that these differences and will say that this one is a severely reduced left ventricular ejection fraction and this one is normal. The same can be done in the short axis. Now you don't have EPSS since the mitral valve is not in view, but you can still use fractional shortening. Over here, this fractional shortening is normal, and this fractional shortening is terrible, and so this is a severely reduced ejection fraction. The good news is that the eyeball technique actually has similar results in studies as it does to the quantitative technique. But the important thing is that you have to see at least 50 echoes with known ejection fractions so you can train your eye and your brain in order to interpret these ejection fractions. Now, the quantitative ejection fraction measurement takes longer, but it's more reliable in patients with wall motion abnormalities. And one important note is EM docs tend to underestimate ejection fraction compared to cardiologists, and it's not really known why. In summary, you have to know how to use Mmode because this allows you to obtain measurements such as EPSS, fractional shortening, and MAPSI, which form the basis of quantitative measurements of ejection fraction when you start out with point-of-care ultrasound. Now, my favorite and the easiest is EPSS, but the fastest is going to be the eyeball or qualitative techniques. But again, you need to have seen at least 50 echoes to use this technique. And thankfully, you don't need to find the exact ejection fraction percentage. You just have to know how to bin it in one of four groups: hyperdynamic EF, normal, mild to moderately reduced, or severely reduced ejection fraction. Thanks for listening, and post any questions in the comments below.